Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
Can we blame the deeply divided state of American politics on evolution? The Washington Post seems to think so.
So I sent you a story this week, and it was from the Washington Post. The headline
I sent it back to you.
And you sent it back to me because you don't delete anything. The headline is, Science is Revealing Why American Politics Are So Intensely Polarized. Well, they are. I brought it up on your morning show, which is my morning show that you're always on and that really belongs to the listeners. But the point being, we talk about the two-party solution and how it's not working. Well, it's not working because one side doesn't acknowledge the other side's right to exist. It begs a question. If you get that a two-state solution can't work in the Middle East, you get that a two-party solution can't work in America? That at some point we have gotten to the point of dysfunction where the left doesn't see the right's right to exist even. We talked a lot about how we got here. Abandonment of absolute truth for new tolerance. Basically, that's moral relativism, and it's a weaponized tolerance that works against you but not against another group. Then the bias of media met the 24-hour news cycle. Then the social dilemma became the death of journalism, and now it's just blatant combative censorship. I mean, we are in a very morally, intellectually, and civically dysfunctional position. I don't know. I know how we got here. I don't necessarily know how to get out of it, but I don't suspect I'm going to go to the Washington Post to figure it out.
Well, what's interesting is that they're basically saying it's science. Social scientists have taken note of these hardening political divisions, pumping out academic articles and books to add data to what appears to be a steady rise in tribalism. Dun, dun, dun. They said the word tribalism out loud. Now, how can you say the word tribalism out loud when it comes to politics, but the Indians have to change their logo?
Yeah, well, yeah.
And you can't say go tribe anymore.
Well, that's new tolerance. That's what I'm explaining. They can move the sidelines. They can move the end zone. It can apply to you, but not to them. It's, once anything goes. And they control the narrative so they can control the rules.
We took issue with this on the public square, and Melanie Elsey pointed out that one of the things that made her most interested in all of this was the terminology throughout the entire article. They used the term political psychologists, and she said,
"What is that?
A nonsense? Yeah, what in the world is that?" Well, and the point is they're trying to make, and they say it very clearly, our politics tend to be more emotional now. You think?
All scientists agree on global warming. All doctors agree on gender assignment. I loved this paragraph. The antagonism that the Trump supporters feel towards the media is a small piece of a broader political and cultural phenomenon. This country, through its political fractious since its founding, is more polarized than ever. I mean, this whole thing is just...
And they lay the whole thing off on evolution, that somehow the tendency to form, quote, tightly knit groups has roots in evolution, according to experts in political psychology. Humans evolved in a challenging world of limited resources in which survival required cooperation and identifying the rivals, the competitors for those resources. Then a Yale sociologist says, quote, the evolution of cooperation required out-group hatred, which is really sad, said Nicholas Christakis of Yale, sociologist, in the book Blueprint, The Evolutionary Origins of a Good Society. Okay, so we're locked into this, right? We can't take personal responsibility over bad attitudes, over fears, over hatreds, over just not loving our neighbor. We got to blame it on evolution. And evolution destined us to be tribal. And so we don't have any choice. We have to be tribal. Michael, I got to tell you.
I reject evolution, let alone this notion that evolution has to do. I mean, I'll go to social media. I'll go to the death of journalism. I'll go to a lot of things. Believers going to church and filling mega churches, but not mega living it all week long. I'll go to a lot of things. I don't know how they get to evolution. And
anything to exempt individuals from personal responsibility
that could possibly change.
And blame it all on some pseudoscience for everything. So this is absolutely absurd. And yet it is wow, it is a big story and everybody's talking about it. And so then you come up with this story from the guy that was running against Biden in New Hampshire, who ends up in New Hampshire and walks across the street. He's doing a little event across the street. Trump's doing a big event. And so he walks across the street. Now, you got to figure he's probably not wearing a Phillips for President t-shirt, right? And he's probably not carrying a yard sign, doesn't have a bumper sticker plastered across his forehead. So he probably goes and starts mingling with the crowd.
And he was genuinely
Yeah.
shocked at how kind, how passionate, how, I'm trying to think, what are the other words he was using?
Friendly stuck out. Yeah.
Accepting. All right. Now, you got to understand, as he's walking across the street, he's thinking, well, my party says they're animals. They're insurrectionists. And
I should be very afraid.
They're Hitler Youth, and Adolf Hitler's having a rally blowing the dog whistle. This is going to be crazy. And he finds real people, kind people, passionate people, intelligent people. And of course, the interview ends with, my party's delusional.
He concluded, the problem is no one's listening to these people, and these are good people.
Yeah.
And that's why they have the passion that they have. So maybe it's not evolution. Maybe it's just bad behavior gone to seed over and over again, thoroughly multiplied by social media and the echo chambers and the silo systems that people get placed in. They get put into these processes.
And we play along with it too, David. Just like technology that is used for ill, we've invited in. We invite it in today for something convenient, and then, of course, it betrays us in the future. I would cut to the chase this way. Imagine if, and I'm presuming that everybody that claims to be of faith is of faith. Doesn't mean we live perfectly. We all fail. David and I fail as much as you, trust me. But if everybody of faith, starting tomorrow, was not on Twitter, not on Facebook, not on, I can't remember what the other one, Instagram, what's the other one that everybody's doing now, TikTok, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How different is America? Not immediately, but in a few months and in a few years.
And I would suggest that getting free of the social media networks isn't about
politics. No, it's
somebody.
about your mental health.
Yeah, it's about getting back to a place. And okay, full disclosure, I don't do social media. Now, I do other things I wish I didn't do that take too much of my time. I spend too much time watching movies. And a lot of the time I spend watching old movies because I'm so fascinated by history. And I mean, we've now got movies going back to whole ways of the 20s, so you can learn a lot about modern history by watching film. But all of us have media distractions in our lives that we have to watch out for. But I can tell you, not being on social media is not a bad thing.
No, and it's about to go to checkmate too, because you're going to now have people, they've created this level of distraction. So you're doing that and not doing what? All right. Now it's led to loneliness and depression. Well, they have an answer for that too. And it's not evolution. They're going to send you bots, unreal, artificial, intelligent, created bots that you can now have a relationship with. Oh, trust me, they've thought of everything. They're going to take this all the way to death. So, but getting back to my analogy, if everybody got off social media, how much of a solution would it be? How about another one? How about if we no longer had Republicans and Democrats? We are just Americans, and every candidate has to bring their ideas to their fellow Americans and win their heart and mind. There is no R to play on and D to play against, or D to play on and R to play against. How different would we be? In other words, if you want to blame evolution, you ought to also blame what Washington warned you about with the two-party system that's dying as well.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what is really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to The Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast. Or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America is really talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
So let's play a little game here with this. You're asking a really provocative question. And I got the drop on you on this one because, you know, I've been doing politics for a long time with a wonderful team of people at the American Policy Roundtable. When I ask you, give me the headquarters of the Republican Party? Where is it?
The national one?
Yeah.
I've never dealt with the National Republican Party. I've always dealt with state Republican Party. I'm guessing D.C., right?
Yeah, but nobody knows really where it's at. I can ask you the same question for the Democrat Party. Now, we talk about Capitol Hill. We know where Congress is, right? We know where the Supreme Court is. We know where the White House is. The people who control all those agencies, the superpower that controls the biggest budget in the world, we probably would think they'd have some.
Oh, a
place
building
where
you
we
could. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so you could find them, right? Where's the Democrat national headquarters? Well, somewhere in D.C. Yeah, somewhere in D.C. Okay, so now let's describe in the fewest number of words what is the Republican Party? What is the Democrat Party? We could go at this all day long and you'd be nailing Jell-O against the wall. We can't even define what it is, where it comes from, and yet it has this amorphous power across all of culture.
We just know that we're an R and we hate the D's. And the D would say, we just know we're D's and we hate the R's.
Or we know that they're in control and we're not, and they have the power and we don't, and they control the ballot and we don't. What you're talking about is Americans standing up saying, excuse me, the last time I looked, you won't find the Republican Party or the Democrat Party in the United States Constitution. Therefore, it must have been built for free people, who I would call free agents. So forget all this. I'm going to take my country back. I'm going to take my party back, blah, blah, blah. Knock all that off. How about if we just all became citizens again?
Well, it's like remember we had the conversation. I said, if you had a zero-based, prioritized, balanced federal budget over a 2-year period of time every year, how many problems did you just solve? If you have term limits on career politicians, how many problems did you just solve? This whole thing can run on autopilot. Well, and it's a great autopilot. It is called the Declaration of Independence in spirit and the Constitution in terms of roadmap. If you had a flat and fair tax system, how much of this would fix itself? Only paper voting in person. How much would you fix this stuff? But don't you get the feeling they're not interested in fixing this stuff?
They're not interested in fixing immigration. They're not interested in fixing abortion. They want more and more cannon fodder to blow across these political lines to create more angst, us versus them, divide and conquer. And because they want to just figure out if they fire at X number of issues, they'll end up with more people left than the other side. It's simply about who can get one last surviving vote more than their opponent over the finish line. It solves nothing. It's tribalism and it's survivalism. Now, I'll tell you right now, the one thing about evolution is true in this regard is if we're down to American politics being the survival of the fittest, one thing we can rest assured of, our country won't survive.
Right.
Because we weren't built that way. You'll have a country, but what you'll have is a country of the people who prevailed, and everyone else won't matter.
I would have thought, was my most interesting take on this Washington Post article. I would have thought everyone would acknowledge that as a culture, we have abandoned a Judeo-Christian faith for moral relativism that has led to tolerance and really become new tolerance, which on this, as we're recording, National Day of Opposites, is just that. It's the you now have a tolerant license to be intolerant against someone else. And it's not a two-way street. It's a political weapon. Then you have the media bias meets death, 24-hour news cycle meets social media equals death of journalism. Now you have a social dilemma. You have a moral crisis to go along with your border crisis. You are completely now the divided states and the divided people, all out shirts and skins. And what I would call, I don't know any other way to call it than a cold civil war. That's what we're in right now. A cold civil war. I would have thought we could all agree on where we're at, how sick it is, and how bad it is, but they won't even agree on that, let alone now we got to all figure out how to get out of this.
Well, we called 1850 Main Street.
Yeah,
because
we got a decade to get out of this.
We said, here's the premise. If you got 10 years to get out of this horrible division and you can't use civil war as a weapon to end it, you've got to find your way out. How do you get there? One of the things we've got to understand is the worst part of the human experience when it comes to governance and politics is tribalism. When we decide to brand people with an identity based upon things that don't define them as humans in reality, we're walking into a big, big problem. You can't do that. You cannot demonize your opponent. You cannot objectify your opponent. People are people no matter how small. People are people no matter whether they're right or wrong or indifferent. People are people, and that's the premise of America, that people are people made in the image of God, of equal value, of equal worth. And in fact, we've got to come up with a way built upon consent to win our battles. Michael, the reason that the Civil War ended was because one side gave up fighting. That's the net result of tribalism. You must obliterate your opponent's will. That is when you're doing this to your neighbor and your brothers and your relatives, it is the worst human conflict you can imagine. This is what the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Associated Press, this is what the American unibrow media, the single one-party media wants us to believe. It's all about us versus them. Can't work that way.
No. And I will say this, and I'm an equal opportunity, hold accountable kind of a person. And I start in the mirror with myself. I was very convicted today. I was reading in John, the gospel, and Jesus is kind of telling them all, I'm going to be leaving, and where I'm going, you can't come. But I'm going to send you a comforter, and I want you to love one another as I have loved you. And I thought, I'm going to leave. How important is that? And then the next most important thing to come out of his mouth to them was go love one another as I have loved you. And I wonder, have I loved my enemies today like he has loved me? And the reason I bring that up is I think the left leads in being nasty, but the right, the more you have focused on them and the more you have engaged them in battle, I'm sorry, the more you're becoming like them. And at that point, it's just a cold civil war about to be the real thing. And we can't survive it and we can't fight it.
Yeah. And we look at these issues and every one of them is important, but every one of them is important in context. Is there any issue worth losing this country over? Now, some people would say yes. And there are issues that I feel so passionately about. I have to say, yeah,
certain liberties.
There are things that,
I agree.
There's things, yes, that it's, but what we better ask ourselves is when it comes to this war talk, this tribalism talk, are we sure we've exhausted every single effort, beginning with prayer and personal repentance? Have we exhausted every single bridge, every single methodology, and have we given patience every opportunity before we start spouting off about us versus them, shirts and skins, and a tribal civil war?
I think we're very spiritually, culturally, mentally, and certainly civically, very disordered right now.
Yeah.
Might want to pick one. Might want to get right first with our Heavenly Father, then next with our founding fathers and the documents that guide us. And God help us if we don't have this awakening. All I will just say is I think it starts with each of us, and I'm trying to do it. I mean, I think anybody that used to listen to my old radio show and now listens to this one sees that I mean what I say. Anybody that listens to 1850, I hope you hear that we mean what we say. I just encourage you to start with yourself. I know I spent 8 years and I probably prayed for Barack Obama twice. That's really awful. And the country certainly survived Barack Obama. We were a lot more in debt, but I certainly failed. If everybody thinks Barack Obama failed America, trust me, I failed Barack Obama more than he failed America. So you start with yourself and you do better every day. And then collectively, hopefully that can start to untangle this tangled mess we find ourselves in.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. And if you want more, check out Your Morning Show and The Public Square. Your Morning Show is where you can hear Michael and David talking about the stories of the day every day. And you can learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy at The Public Square. You can listen to Your Morning Show and The Public Square on the iHeart mobile app and on radio stations across the country. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.